Hello, hi there. Welcome to Guiding Voice podcast series, The Guiding Voice for a Better Future. This podcast is to help students and young professionals to shape their careers. Dear listeners, in every episode, we interact with industry experts, academicians, and coaches to drive some insightful conversations that will help our audience learn some great things. Also, we share an interesting trivia or fun fact around the IT world towards the end of every episode. Thank you for tuning in. This is Naveen and I will be your solo host for today. And today, we are going to discuss candid conversations with an IT professional turned academician turned entrepreneur. And we are pleased to welcome Venu to our show today to cover this topic. Venu Pala has over 28 years of experience in the IT, mechanical, and academia. Predominantly, he worked on middleware and CMS technologies. He has been into various technical and operations roles like middleware service line lead at Infosys UK 2013, and he also worked as a CMS architect in USA during 2003. Post his IT tenure, he worked as an assistant professor in mechanical engineering. He also founded Tech Talents, a startup with focus on CMS services and data sciences. He's also into corporate training and also study overseas consultancy. So Venu, welcome to the Guiding Voice podcast series again. Can we get started?
Hey Naveen, thanks for having me here. I'm excited to be part of your podcast.
Thanks again, Venu. Let's get into our conversation. Can we talk a little more about your career journey? You have worked in mechanical industry, IT, academics and training. And what are you doing currently?
So I have started my career as a diploma engineer way back in 1988, and I also started studying engineering parallelly while working as a mechanical supervisor. So by end of 1997, I have about 9 years experience as a mechanical engineer and also with engineering degree. So it was really a plus point for me to study parallelly, then work. In the year 1998, I moved to IT industry as a mainframe programmer. And then I continued till 2013 as a middleware service line lead at Infosys. And I was instrumental in getting huge projects for Infosys. And also prior to that, I worked as a systems analyst in GE. And post 2013, I left the IT companies and then I started as an academic person as a lecturer in VNR Vignan Jyoti Engineering College. And then in 2016, I did my MTech and I was a topper in MTech class of that year. Of course, then it was a requirement in academics that we need to have PhD. So then I left the academics. I started my own company, that is Tech Talents, providing corporate trainings and web designing services, so on.
That's pretty diversified career path, Venu. And how was your transformation into academics and training? And what made you choose that path, exiting a lucrative corporate career?
Yes, couple of things. Basically, I was a talent manager at Infosys, parallelly handling the projects as well. I was also given a role of talent management. So that's when I realized that I have a passion towards trainings. So that continued even after leaving the IT. Of course, the main reason for leaving IT was a tremendous amount of stress as a COE lead I used to have. So then I decided, okay, it is worth spending the same energy at academics or trainings outside. So that's how I moved to trainings. And then I was into academics and then now into full-time corporate trainings. Basically, the transformation was very difficult and very painful, I would suggest, because it's not easy to forego a lucrative IT career and struggle for making small monies. However, it is still, I prefer this way because it gives both work-life balance easily, teaching profession.
Also from your profile and as I've been observing you very closely, you have gotten back to your studies after working 20 years itself, right? So it is not that easy, but you managed to be a topper in 2016 when you pursued your MTech. How was it possible?
Yes, it was really challenging because there are two things. One is you are coming from an IT field and you are going to academic, but here the total domain is changing from IT to mechanical, because in our education industry you need to have your engineering and master's same specialization. Because of that, my BTech was in mechanical. I am forced to do master's in mechanical engineering once again. So that is a real challenge, because after 20 years of gap, that too in a IT field, and coming back to the mechanical engineering and studying the mechanical engineering all over, I was not even having proper command on normal tables, so I had to read all over again. So it was a very big challenge, but still I was able to manage the getting topper in the class, because all credit goes to my professors, Dr. Vijay Naidu, Dr. Jagadishwar Sharma, and Dr. Sheikh Hussain. These people have given me a lot of encouragement. So that's how I could get the MTech topper in mechanical engineering.
Yeah, that's amazing, and I can understand the amount of hard work that you might have put in. Venu, again, you went to academics from IT, but why did you leave again? What are the challenges faced by engineering college professors today?
Yeah, this is where I really want to give my true feedback, in the sense that our education is the world-class education. Our standards are world-class standards. Our engineering is the best. When it goes to on the books, at the same time, there are innumerable number of academicians having very good skills and technical knowledge, but the situation here is very pathetic when it comes to the incomes of the academicians. So for example, an assistant professor is getting just hardly 15,000 per month in an engineering college. So at the same time, they need PhD. Of course, I am not a person who can comment on that, but in order to do PhD, again, you have to spend a lot of money and effort. So that is where the big challenge is. So I am not in a position to do PhD, so I came out of that. Still, what the lessons I have learned is, if at all you want to be in academics, you have to plan very much early in the life. That is my learning. Somewhere as soon as you finish your BTech, or somewhere in the middle of your career, if at all you want to come to the academics anytime, you have to plan at that time only, not just after whenever you want to do PhD. That is not the case, because there is already so many intellectuals, so many PhDs with lots of experience in India. So you are not going to do anything new by just achieving PhD now. So you have to plan very much early. So that's where I realized, and I came out of academics. But I was able to do very good job in placements. So because I worked as a placement officer in the colleges, that's where the industry person can contribute more as a placement officer than academician. That's what I realized. That's my sincere opinion. Because the faculty is given tremendous amount of work, not only the teaching, but they are supposed to do lots of documentation, coursework, or NBA work. I mean, tremendous pressure on the faculty. At the same time, there is no income, there is no respect. So that is where I feel a little bit sad about our academicians today.
Yeah, thanks for those candid insights. So can you shed some light on the engineering courses and their suitability or fitment in today's world? And maybe you can also share your opinion about engineering education in India.
Yeah, Naveen, absolutely. See, nowadays there are typically 5 or 6 engineering courses, if you want to broadly classify. One is the computer science and IT, information technology stream, which is having lots of demand these days for obvious reasons because of the IT industry. There is a little bit more demand for ECE also. However, there is a real challenge for the core sectors like civil, mechanical, and electrical. These courses are suffering a lot because there is no demand for the graduates of these engineering streams, just because there is no jobs for these sectors for freshers. If you see the CSE and IT folks, they will get jobs easily in the IT industry. But what about the civil and mechanical and electrical guys? It's hard to get a job as a fresher. That is one thing. And there is a lot of gap between the industry requirement and academic output. That's what I realized. So there is somewhere something is missing. Either the academic institutions are not getting what is the industry demand properly, or the industry is not able to create the jobs for these freshers in these core sectors. That is what I observed. Still, again, I say that there are a lot of callers who can comment more on this. This is the challenge we have. That is, again, demand and supply gap is there. That's what is the problem.
Sure. So all you're trying to mention here is some of the courses like civil, mechanical, and electrical are lacking core jobs. And I have another question with regard to these engineering students. Like every year, lakhs of engineering students are passing out. But do we have that many jobs to accommodate them?
Yeah, that is the problem. Basically, every year about 12 to 13 lakh students are passing engineering. However, only 7 lakh students are getting placements. That too, mainly in the IT industry, they are getting the jobs. So the problem here is from both sides. That is one from the student side and from the industry side. So suppose you take an example of IT industry. So generally, IT industry absorbs people from CSC and IT graduates. However, there is ECE engineering also. But typically, if we can segregate the jobs in such a way that like software development jobs can be given to the computer science and IT people, whereas the networking, cyber security, data center or embedded system, these kind of jobs should be preferred by the ECE folks. So if we can have this kind of understanding, what happens is initially onwards people will focus on their core sectors. Like an ECE guy can be trained more on networking, cyber security, this type of things, and the CSE and IT people on the software development like web development or whatever, Azure, cloud computing, this type of. If that can happen, there could be some focused approach towards the employment. And similarly, the mechanical and civil and electrical people are also joining the computer science. That is one unfortunate thing, because it is not easy to study mechanical or civil or electrical. For that matter, any engineering, you study almost 40 subjects. But after that, at the end of the day, you are again joining to IT just because of lack of job opportunities. That is where is the concern. Again, they have to plan carefully the career. The students, if they are taking core sector in the engineering, they have to some way find opening for them in those core sectors. You have to depend on the industry.
Sure, I think it makes sense. I really love your advice of having focused approach for those belonging to different branches. Maybe CSC and IT folks can pursue courses that are relevant to software development, and similarly ECU folks can concentrate on working on networking, cybersecurity, data center management, so on and so forth. And similarly, mechanical, civil and electrical students should choose their own domains rather than trying to get entry into a particular job.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more point. See, even in mechanical engineering, in the core sectors also, there are softwares available like ANSYS, CFD, and AutoCAD, mechanical CAD, civil CAD. So if we can bring the talent in these domains, we can expect the projects from big engineering companies like Boeing or electrical companies or mechanical companies. We can get more projects from outside in these core sectors also, provided we have very good talent in these sectors. So it's like both has to happen hand in hand. So unless we have a good talent people in these core sectors, we can't get the projects. So it has to be synced up.
Given that there are so many challenges, with regard to engineering students and the opportunities that they have, and few fields are lucrative, few branches are good, and other branches do not have same level of opportunities and all. So what is your advice to students that are aspiring to study engineering?
When it comes to studying engineering, see, typically in our culture, like most of the people are going for engineering, but they don't know what is engineering. Like, so some people are joining just because their family elder person has an engineering profession, or one of his uncles is an engineer, or just because government is giving fees reimbursement for engineering. So my suggestion for students would be not just go by these kind of things like fees reimbursement or some family background. These things will not work, because nowadays engineering requirement is very different than previous days. Nowadays everything is changing fast. For example, IoT. For example, nowadays you are hearing about Hyperloop technology, which can be used for transporting people from one city to another city through separate channel of its own, Hyperloop, right? So at the same time IoT. So there are so many things are happening very dynamically. So you are choosing engineering as your study, you must be very focused. What branch of engineering you want to study, whether mechanical, civil or CSC, and why you want to study that branch only. You have to analyze properly, and you have to meet or discuss with so many industry professionals or someone who has experience in that field. Then only you decide that particular branch. Secondly, nowadays engineering graduates, they don't really realize what goes on at the field. After passing the engineering, what are the industry they are supposed to work, they are not having fair understanding. Like as a mechanical engineer, for example, you are supposed to work in industry. You are supposed to deal with the workforce, machines, and materials. You are supposed to work underground or over the sea or whatever it is. Like in our old days, like we used to work in underground coal mines. We used to go almost 2 kilometers under the ground to install certain mechanical equipments, or we used to even climb almost 30 floors in an industry to see something happening at the 30th floor, some material movement or some kind of fluid flow. Whatever degree you are studying, like mechanical or civil or electrical, you must be prepared to work in the field for some time at least till you get into the management level. So that is what is missing. The orientation is missing. While studying itself, they should have an idea of what they will be working in future. That is one thing which for that you need to consult so many people. That is one thing. Another thing is, you must choose after joining or in the middle of third year or fourth year. You should have a clear idea which path you are going to choose. See, after engineering, typically there are 4 paths. One is the software job. Generally, they are going for software jobs. Or another, some people are going for higher study like MS or MBA. Or some people are going for entrepreneurship. Or some people are going for academics. So each of these 4 segments, like higher study or a software job or a core job or entrepreneurship or academics, each of these have different set of expectations, different set of requirements. For example, higher study means you have to have very good CGPA, very good academics, like no backlogs, or you should have some paper publications. So these are the typical requirements for higher study. But when it comes to software job, probably you should have done some good proof of concepts, or you should have developed some small softwares and put it in GitHub or things like that. If you want to become entrepreneur, you should have some creative ideas. You should have established some proof of concept in the incubations. So things like that you should have done if you want to become entrepreneur. Or if you want to become an academician, then obviously you should have idea to choose which specialization in the further PG, post graduation. So if everybody have clear idea about what they will be doing after engineering, then it becomes easy. Even it helps in finding the jobs also. Like typically what happens, everybody immediately after completing engineering, they want to go for a job. Whether they will continue in the job, no one knows. But simply they will go and catch the job, and after 1 year they will leave the job. What happens is there is an opportunity lost for a person who actually needed a job. So instead of that, if you have clear-cut idea, clear-cut path, what you are going to do, then everybody gets equal chances, equal opportunity. So that is what is my suggestion for people who are studying engineering.
Yep, it makes sense. Now, slightly switching topics, what is your advice for parents of the students that are aspiring to study engineering? Because in India, we see a lot of peer pressure or the herd mentality kind of thing.
Yes, Naveen, absolutely. This is as a parent myself, I can understand. I want to give some feedback because when I studied MTech, I told you, right, in my house, there were 3 of us studying. My both sons were studying engineering and myself studying MTech. It was very hard. I mean, as a parent, I was studying myself and I was also seeing my children studying. So I realized that the parents don't have proper idea about current day engineering study demand. What goes in studying engineering, how much hard work is there for student in current day engineering, because there are almost like 40 plus subjects are there and the depth is more compared to previous days. On top of the core demand and the subject demand, the students are forced to learn good communication skills, and everybody should speak English, everybody should be polished, all that. But the saddest thing is the students have to travel almost 2 hours each way for reaching to the college. So they have to travel on the buses. So typically what happens is they lose a lot of time and energy to travel to the institute. So this is one challenge. So the parents need to understand how to reduce this time to travel. So probably they may have to relocate nearer to the college, or the student must be placed in the college, near to the college. Something has to be done so that they can get time to study the subjects properly. At the same time, it is a challenge for parents also, because there are lots of costs involved in studying engineering. Nowadays, engineering study is becoming very, very costly for parents. So are you really able to support them, support your children to pursue the engineering? Are you able to continue their masters? Because nowadays just studying engineering is nothing, because every house has 2 or 3 engineering students. Okay, so just engineering will not be sufficient. They may have to go for masters, they may have to go for PhDs. So are you able to support them thoroughly till they want to succeed? That is a question the parents have to put it. Only if you are able to support throughout, then you advise your children to go for engineering. Otherwise, it's better to go for normal degrees. Guide them towards civil services or bank jobs. Many other opportunities are there, not just engineering. So that's where parents have to analyze, because that's again one way we can reduce the competition for engineering jobs. So I have seen that many students, they simply study engineering, but after that they do some other activity. Somebody is writing the bank jobs. Things won't work, unnecessary wasting the engineering 4 years degree, valuable degree. That's where so parents have to think that aspect, and students have to also think about that.
Yeah, I think it makes perfect sense, and I can relate to many things that you have cited here. And I have a different question now. What are your tips for those planning to venture into academics and corporate training? Because this is a field not touched by many, because many of the students are inclined towards getting a corporate job, mostly into IT sector.
Yes, basically academics and corporate training, these are very good fields. However, in order to get financial returns, it will take some time, because here in academics or corporate training, the subject is the key. So you should be having very good command on the subject, whether you teach data science, whether you teach web designing, or whether you go for any other computational fluid dynamics, whatever subject you are teaching, you should have the command on the subject thoroughly. And then secondly, there should be demand for that subject. So why anyone will come to training is they are looking for some job. After finishing the training, they should be getting a job. So first of all, you have to align your training to the current job demand. Only then you will be a successful trainer. Apart from having a good subject knowledge, you should also understand what is the demand in this current situation. And besides that, you should have a lot of patience in order to be successful as a corporate trainer or an academician. A lot of patience is required, because you have to make your teaching interesting to the student, interesting to the audience. And it should be interactive, it should be focused, and you should have good communication skills apart from the subject. So suppose if you are teaching computational fluid dynamics, you should have good understanding of what is physics, what is the flow analysis, how to do flow analysis, how to do analysis of heat, where it is applied, and what kind of jobs are there for CFD. So this type of analysis you should have. And of course there is $1 million market waiting in the corporate trainings, there is no doubt about it. But in order to be successful, you should have very good command on subject, at the same time understand the market demand. So then definitely you will be a successful trainer. Hope that helps, Naveen.
Yeah, fabulous tips, Venu. Now, of late you started counseling students on higher education overseas. So any tips for those aspiring to do higher education outside India, like maybe Master of Science, MS or MBA?
Yes, Naveen, definitely. Besides my web designing and corporate trainings, I am also doing the counseling for higher education admissions for MS and MBA. So particularly nowadays, UK is attracting many people for studying abroad, because they are offering post-study work permit. So if you study just for 1 year, you can get a 2 years work permit. So you can very good chances for settling down in UK. Similarly, there are other opportunities like US is also offering the OPT. So 3 years or 1 year, 2 years OPT you can get. So that's all good. I mean, if you want to go for higher studies, the first foremost thing is you need to have a very good CGPA. So in India, you have a CGPA scale of 1 to 10. But in US and other Western countries, the CGPA is from 1 to 4. And the universities are demanding almost 3 CGPA. On a scale of 1 to 4, they are demanding minimum 3 CGPA, which maps to around 7 in our CGPA. So our scale of 1 to 10, it maps to around 7. So that means you must have minimum 7 or 8 CGPA in our Indian standards in order to get a very good college, very good university in UK or US. Not only very good university, in order to get a course of your choice. For example, if you want to go for cyber security or ethical hacking, or you want to go for data science MS. So obviously you will have to have a very good CGPA to get that kind of course and that kind of university. And similarly, you should not have any backlogs at all. So even though the university allows like 5 to 6 backlogs, you should try to avoid those backlogs. Then only you will get a good course, good university. Similarly, I mean, the backlogs is one of the most disturbing thing nowadays in engineering, because many students have more than 7 or 8 backlogs. Some people have 13 backlogs out of. So that's not correct. So they should try to avoid right from beginning itself. You should have a very good SOP, statement of purpose. What is the purpose of why you are going for that particular course only? So you should be able to justify very well in the SOP, that statement of purpose, when you apply for admissions. And besides that, you should have recommendation letters from your HODs and professors, and you should have good publication record, paper publication in choice of your study. And on top of all these things, you should be financially stable to support your MS. So at least till you complete your MS, you should have financial support. That's where is the focus. And you might have some experience also will help. That's what I suggest, Naveen.
Okay, yeah, these are all really cool inputs, and I wish I had gotten similar kind of guidance in the past. All right.
Okay.
Anyways, I think this episode is going to be a boon to those who are aspiring to do higher education abroad, or who wanted to pursue some jobs in the academic industry, so on and so forth. You have started many ventures on your own, right? So any tips for those budding entrepreneurs?
Yes, Naveen. Actually, not many. I mean, I would say I have only 2 things going now. That is, one is my tech talents, which is mainly focusing on corporate trainings and academic trainings. Another is small, my hobby, that is homesandneeds.com. That is mainly for providing property management services. So basically, it is a very painful journey to be an entrepreneur, because first thing is you should have a unique idea to be successful as an entrepreneur, because anybody may wish to become an entrepreneur but won't be successful if you have a normal idea, because everybody is doing that. So your idea should be very unique. That is one thing. And there should be enough demand for your product or your service, the service you are offering. That is one thing. So like, for example, you might have seen the Zomato or the Swiggy. So I mean, this is one of the unique service, I would say. Like that, e-commerce oriented things are becoming very popular. Even nowadays, everything is at your doorstep because of this e-commerce, right? So someone has to identify what is people's demand, what is people's requirement. Then if you are able to fit in that slot, your idea in that particular slot, then there is good chances of becoming successful. So that is the thing. And besides the passion, or besides identifying the gap, you should also have a supporting system, like somebody from your family or somebody from your banking industry. They should support your idea. Then only it will be possible. Because typically any idea to be successful, it will take minimum 2 to 3 years. To get a break even think of break even, it will take minimum 2 to 3 years. You should have enough supporting system to reach to that break even. So that one should have idea. Honestly, one should agree for that before venturing it out. And your idea should be not only unique, it should be scalable. As the demand growing, as the population is growing, whether your platform will sustain, whether your platform will be scalable to that population growth. That is where is interesting. For example, you take Oyo. Oyo is a online hotel booking service, right? So that is one of the good ideas. It is scalable. They can add any number of hotels to their platform. That's what I mean, just for an example. So it should be scalable. And also, as an entrepreneur, you should be having good idea about the processes involved in getting the approvals, getting the company registrations, all those things. In fact, we are helping the entrepreneurs to get the company registration, to quickly launch their service through website. All those things we are supporting from Tech Talents. So you might have to do some incubation at an academic institution or an industry location. Before launching your product, you must be able to incubate your idea with the help of these academic institutes or some industries for that matter. So approach them and try to curate your idea. Then only take it to the market. That's what my sincere suggestion to the budding entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think you have covered most of the points here. One other question: you are yet to see the life of a retired IT professional, because IT industry, to be honest, in India has started about 30 years ago, and the first gen retirees are yet to come. Since you have taken a different path now, how is non-IT life?
It is very tough now, believe me, because as long as you are in IT, you are basically enjoying good salary and a decent life and car or building, whatever it is. But as soon as you come out of it, you start seeing strange things happening altogether because in IT, basically, you are treated sophisticatedly, you are treated in a well polished language, okay?
Yeah.
But when you come out here in India, I mean, not only India, anywhere else, you are supposed to do rough and tough jobs, Sometimes you have to do mechanical jobs, sometimes whatever comes along, you have to be prepared to do that. So, there you can't expect the polished language, the culture, all those things. So, you have to be prepared. When you leave IT, you have to start unlearning the things. When I say unlearning, you leave about sophistication. You have to be prepared to do what is required for that moment. Of course, legally, I'm not saying to do something illegal, but you are supposed to do everything legal, at the same time maintaining the integrity, and be prepared to satisfy yourself with low incomes. That is the hardest part. As I said, as an academician, you have to work for 15,000 a month, whereas in IT, you are working for 1 lakh for a month. So there is a big gap, and you have to make your family also to understand what is going around. When you leave IT and when you started becoming normal person, they also have to support you. That is one thing, you have to take them into confidence. So it's not easy. At the same time, if you come down on your requirements, come down on your lifestyle, then it is not a problem. You can survive. At the same time, you have to maintain good health, because in India, not only India, everywhere, the health is becoming very costly and very difficult. So health is very important. So for that, you may have to take some spiritual route and be happy with what you are getting, and maybe you take some profession like teaching and find some peace in that. So that's what is my suggestions for upcoming retirement of IT professionals,
Amazing. I could visualize how the situation is, honestly speaking, when you are switching domains from IT to non-IT. So it's not going to be an easy path, and you have articulated it very well. Now, one last question before we wind up this conversation. Any suggestions for the middle level and senior IT professionals?
Yes, and Naveen, this is one of the important things, because the senior professionals always they are thinking about big things like cloud or data science, whatever. But even I used to be passionate about it. But if at all they want to come out of the IT, first the important they have to do is they find somebody of their core sector. Like suppose I am a mechanical person, I should find somebody young person who was interested in mechanical. So try to support him. You as a earning person, you try to support him, and so that he will support in the long run to you. So you try to establish a small scale industry in your core sector. See, basically a long time ago, many people switched from mechanical civil to the IT, but now they want to come back to core, means nobody will allow. So that's why you have to find somebody before leaving your IT profession. Find somebody who can help you to establish a small scale industry. So later you can slowly transform yourself into that industry. That is the only way. In that way, you can also help others. You can also help youngsters. So with your help, they will establish something. You can later join that. So that will be a seamless transformation from an IT to a non-IT. And at the same time, you are helping the young generation. So that is one suggestion I would suggest. So not only that, many people are trying to buy flats or apartments or something to make a rental income out of it. But that's not the correct way. As an industry person, you should try to set up an industry. Try to motivate the young people by spending some amount of your decent earnings, spend some amount and try to encourage the entrepreneurs, and then later you can be owner of that mechanical or civil or electrical industry or contract business. That is one good way to see both happening, encouraging the youngsters as well as you can also be beneficial after that. Even for that matter, farming, you can think of agriculture also.
Excellent insights, Venu. Thank you so much for joining us today. And indeed, it was a wonderful conversation on various topics, like we've covered right from engineering courses, jobs in academic and corporate training, and also nuances of entrepreneurship. Amazing insights, and thank you so much for your time, and appreciate all the insights that you have provided. And I'm sure our audience are going to get benefit out of it.
Thanks, Naveen. Thanks again for giving me this opportunity to share. Thank you very much.
Sure, it's my pleasure. So, dear listeners, to know more about our speaker and the content, visit or follow us on social media. We are available on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, and also on YouTube. Just search for The Guiding Voice and then follow, like, subscribe to us, and also share within your network. Also, feel free to email us at theguidingvoiceforyou@gmail.com. That is THEGUIDINGVOICE 4 as a digit, U as a letter @gmail.com. Or you may WhatsApp us on India number 9494587187. I repeat, it is India number 9494587187, and we will be happy to collaborate with you. Also, of late we have been receiving a lot of career guidance related questions from our regular listeners through WhatsApp and email, and we have been promptly responding to them. So we are pleased to open up a new mode of interacting with you all while providing a chance to broadcast yourself. Yes, you heard it right. And in case if you have any questions related to career guidance around the IT field, just voice record your questions from your phone and WhatsApp us the audio file at India number 9494587187, and we'll play your question along with our answer in the future episodes. Hope you'll utilize this wonderful opportunity. Alright, so we'll look forward for your questions. Alright, so it brings us to the trivia segment of today's episode, and today's trivia is about @ symbol. It is used in emails, and it is one of the most widely used symbols in the world today. In 2004, the @ symbol became the first new character to be added to the Morse code in several decades. This new character, which is also known as the COM@, right? It consists of the signals for both A, which is dot dash, and C, that is dash dot dash dot, with no space or break in between. Interesting, isn't it? Thank you for listening. There is more in store, folks. Stay tuned. Have a wonderful time. Take care. Be safe. Until next time. Bye-bye.